So good evening and welcome everyone to today's class. We'll be doing test case design. Okay, so let's look into our table of contents and what we'll be covering today. We'll be covering what a test case is, characteristics of a good test case, how to write a good test case. We'll learn and understand what checking language is, what a test script, and then any question follows by Q&A. So what is a test case? Okay, so a test case is a predefined instructions, okay, that outlines the step to be taken, the data input to be used, and the expected results, which serves as criteria for evaluating the success or failure of a specific functionality. Okay, so it is a detailed set of conditions or variables under which a tester will determine whether an application, software system, or one of its features is working as intended. Right. Test cases are an essential component of a software testing process and are designed to verify that the software met its specific requirements and behave correctly in different scenarios. A well-written test case can provide clear instructions for the tester and serve as documentation of how a particular aspect of that software should function. Okay, so before you start executing your test, you have to write test case. More often than not, as soon as stories are being committed into sprints, okay, you've created your task. The next thing you are meant to start doing is to start writing your test case. You can't start executing your test before you write your test case. You have to write your test case before you start executing your test. And you write your test case based on the acceptance criteria given, based on the requirements. Okay, so that when you now start executing your test, you will now be running your test or executing your test based on what you have on your test case. Okay, I know when we did type of testing, I mentioned few testing that you don't need to write test case before you start executing that test, such as exploratory testing, like as I mentioned. Okay, you can just jump in. You don't need a predefined test case to do exploratory testing. But every other testing before you do it, you need your test case. Okay, so you need to design your test case before that. Okay, so let's look at components of a test case. So test case has got its key components, okay, and they include test ID. Okay, and what is our test ID? Our test ID is a unique identifier for that test case. Okay, test ID makes it easier to reference and track a particular test case. So on our Azure DevOps, okay, once you've created your test case, the Azure DevOps automatically gives it a test case ID. Right. So when you are using any of this cloud infrastructure, okay, or cloud testing tools, it automatically gives it a test case ID. But when you are writing your test case on Excel, you have to manually give your test case a test case ID. So most organizations that uses Excel to document and design their test case, they have a way or a standard which they give their test case its ID. It could be TID, which is test case ID 001, TID 0022, ID 003, depending on the standard they have chosen. Okay, they can decide to say it's SAD 001, SAD, so they follow that format, depending on what format they followed. But Azure DevOps will give test case automatically to any test case ID to any test case you have designed. Okay, so the next one we'll have is test case title. Test case title. So test case title can also be a brief description, okay, of what the test case is. So it's a brief description of the functionality or scenario being tested. Okay, so for example, you want to test to ensure that you can log into Facebook, for example. So your test case title could be verify user can log into Facebook or verify login functionality. Depending on how you want to structure it, it has to be concise and it has to make sense. Okay, so the next one we'll have is the step test. Okay, a step test is a detailed set of instructions or actions that the tester needs to perform to execute the test. So your test steps those step by step. Okay, so let's say, for example, you want to look at what course PrimeSoft has got to offer. Okay, you know that you will navigate to the website or to PrimeSoft website. You know you need to click on the training. Then you can view the course that PrimeSoft is offering. So those step by steps, okay, where you navigating to the website, you clicking on the training, and then viewing the website. Those step by step, okay, are what your test steps is. Okay, so we have a format that you can write. You can start to write it plainly by saying, okay, I navigate to the website, click on training, and click on and view the web page. Okay, we also have another standard you can use to do it, which has to do with Gherkin, syntax, using Gherkin syntax, okay, and following a particular procedure to write it. But we'll come to that when we get to Gherkin language, and I will explain that much more better. But the most important thing is for you to understand what test steps, okay, are. The next one we'll have is test data. So test data is a specific input data or conditions required to execute your test steps. Okay, so most often when you are testing an application or a functionality, it will require that you enter information or you input information or data into an input field or into a particular field. Okay, those data that you are inputting is what is called test data. For example, you want to log into your account on PrimeSoft. Okay, so you need a test data before you'll be able to log in. Okay, and that your test data could be your username and your password. Username and password is test data. Note that you could have a positive test data and a negative test data. So you use your positive test data, which could include valid password, valid username. So you can also have your data a test data that you can use for your negative testing, which could include your invalid username and invalid password. They are all test data. So any set of data that you use for your testing are called test data. Okay, so next we'll have expected results. Expected result I've talked about expected result and actual result in our previous class. So expected result is the anticipated outcome or behavior of a system or a functionality, a component, okay, after the test step are executed. So when you are executing a test, you already know what your expected result is. And the expected result is how the application should function. How the application should function. So those are your expected results. So by the time you execute your testing, you will get to your expected results. Okay, so that is not necessarily how the application is functioning, but that is how the application should function, which is your expected results. So then brings us to what we know as our actual results. So our actual result is the result observed by a tester during the execution of test. So when you are testing and you find out how the application is working or how the application is functioning, that is what your actual result is. So like I've mentioned before, when the expected result has met the actual results, when you've gone there, what you are expecting is what you have seen. How you are expecting the software to function is exactly how the software is functioning. That means your expected has met the actual and the application has passed, your test has passed. But when the actual has not met the expected, that the application is not functioning as it should. Okay, so that brings us to status. Okay, status is the current state of your test case. The current state of your test case. Example of status includes pass, which is when your expected has made the actual. That means your test has passed. So you can change the status of your test to pass. You have failed. Example of status is failed when the expected has not met the actual, or when the actual has not met the expected, your test will fail. So we have not executed. When you've written your test case and you've not actually executed it, okay, the status will be not executed. Okay, so we have so many other status as well. Some like Azure will have not run, will have blocked. Maybe you are testing it and you've blocked it. Azure also has a status of not applicable. Okay, so these are just a few number of them like that I've mentioned. Okay, so the next one we'll have is characteristics of a good test case. Characteristics of a good test case. So a good test case possesses several key characteristics that contribute to the effectiveness of the software testing process. Okay, and here below I've listed 5 essential characteristics of a good test case, which include clarity and simplicity. Okay, your test case should be clear, concise, okay, and easy to understand. Right. So, what does the clarity helps us? How does it help us as a tester? Because most organizations, you realize that if it's an organization that has more than 1 or 2 QAs, so sometimes when they bring in a new resource, a new QA resource, they might want you to they want to ease you gradually into the team. They can ask you to start writing test cases for them while other QAs execute them. Okay, so when you write a simple and a clear and simplified test case, it makes it easier for other testers to execute that test case without ambiguity. It also helps you. Let's assume that you're the one that will test it, will execute those test cases. It makes it easier also for you to execute it as well. Okay, so we'll have relevance to we'll have manageability and maintainability. Manageability and maintainability. So test cases should be organized and easy to manage. Okay, they should also be maintainable as software evolves. As you all know, software, the requirements changes at time. So you need to write your software in such a way that you can easily manage and maintain it. Okay, so the next one we have is relevance to the requirement. I always mention that whenever you're writing your test case, you should ensure that you write your test case in accordance with the requirements. Okay, so test case should directly relate to the specified requirements or user stories. This ensures that testing align with the intended functionality and meets user expectation. So hence why you don't look at the code that the developers has written and then start executing your test or write your test case based on the code. You write your test case based on the requirements, on the user stories and acceptance criteria. Right. So we have traceability, which is the number 4. So test case should be traceable back to the requirement or user story they are testing. Okay, this helps to ensure comprehensive test coverage and provide a clear link between testing activity and project requirements. So this kind of go hand in hand with relevance to test case. So when you are testing when you are writing up your test case, you need to ensure that you can trace it back. Okay, hence why when you come to Azure, you create your test case under the user story or the PBI that you are testing. That same way, you also create your test case. You create your tags under the user story or PBI that you're working. And under that same way, you can also create your test case under each PBI that you are working. That way, you can easily say, this test case is related to this requirement or this user story. Okay? You don't, if you are, let's say, for what we have in the sprint, we'll have logo, right? And when you want to write your test case on your test case that you will use to execute your logo functionality, okay, you are writing that test case under technologies. You cannot trace it back. So you have to write each of the user story under each of the test case under the user story you are testing. Okay, so we have reusability. Reusability. Okay, test case usability, of course, refer to the capacity of using a test case in multiple scenarios across different parts of the software application or even in different projects. The goal of usability is to maximize the efficiency and effectiveness of the testing processes by leveraging on existing test cases rather than creating a new ones from scratch. This helps to save time, resources, while ensuring consistency throughout test coverage. So good thing when we are using Azure, Azure has what we known as shared step functionality. So where let's say you are testing or writing a test case for a scenario that involve navigating to URL, okay, or navigating to the website, clicking on header menu, for example, and then clicking on another button before you get to the page. Right. So when you have written that step and you want to also write another test case, okay, for another functionality that has to go through the same um, step or through the same steps, okay, you don't need to rewrite it again. All you need to do in Azure is to just use that shared functionality, create a shared step, apply the shared step to that particular one that you want to, that particular test case that you're designing, and then you can reuse it. Okay. Another instance where I can give you is when you want to write a test case, okay, that can test your application on different devices. You've written this test case, okay, that says, okay, when you navigate to the home page and click on this button and click on another button, then you should see a particular page, and that page should, be dynamic enough to, be compatible to an Android device, a tablet device, and even a desktop device. When you have written that, anytime you want to test the compatibility of any particular functionality on any device, you can reuse that test case over and over and over again. Okay, so that's it about test case usability. Okay, so now that brings us to our next slide, which is how to write a good test case. How to write a good test case. Okay, writing a good test case is crucial for effective software testing. A well-crafted test case provides clear instructions, defines the expected outcome, and help identify defects in the software. Okay, and below, as you can see, 6 step-by-step guide on how to write a good test case. Okay, one includes understanding the requirements. Hence why we have sprint planning, and we have urged everyone that once we're having sprint planning, ensure that you understand the requirements. It's very important. If you don't understand the requirements, you cannot write a good test case. Hence, you need to ask questions during the refinement or the sprint planning. Okay, so thorough understanding of the requirements or user story related to the functionality you are testing, okay, helps you to write a clear and comprehensive test case. It's very important. Number 2 is be specific and concise. Okay, each test case should address a specific scenarios or functionality. Avoid combining multiple scenarios in a single test case, okay, to maintain its clarity. So you can, in some cases, okay, what most testers does is they go ahead and create in one step case, instead of making that step case concise and focusing on a particular scenario, they want to write one test case that would encompass all the scenarios. Yes, if they're executing it, they already know what they're doing, but it's not concise. And say, for instance, another tester picked that test case up, and try to execute that test case, they wouldn't be able to do that, okay, because it's not concise and it covers a lot of scenarios, and they might not cover all those scenarios, which could lead to, bug not being detected. Okay, so the next one we have is use a standard format. Okay, follow a standardized format for your test case. This typically includes, ensuring that you have all the test case components, which include your test case ID, your title, preconditions, okay, test steps, expected results, actual results, and your status, which could either be pass or failed status. Okay, those are the standardized formats you can use to design your test case. So some of these components have been provided for us by Azure. Okay, once when you are writing your test case on Azure, you can fill in your title. Your test case has already been assigned to it. Okay, you have to enter your test steps. You have to enter your expected results. Okay, your actual results, and once you have executed it and passed, you can now assign the status of pass or failed, depending on the situation or the outcome of your test. Okay, so we have number 4, write clear and simple test steps. Okay, your test steps should be simple. Each of your test case should address a specified scenario or functionality. Avoid combining multiple scenarios. Okay, so I've said that as well. And the next one we'll have is consider positive and negative scenarios. It's very important. So looking at when we did our test technique, okay, we use a technique where we have, use the boundary value analysis and as well as all the test case, all the test technique that we use, you see that we were able to use our boundary value analysis and equivalent partition to generate both negative and positive test case. Okay, so it's always important when you are writing your test, consider both positive and negative. Let's say you are testing your login functionality and you have entered your username, your valid password, you've entered your valid username, you've entered your valid password, and you've clicked on login and you logged in successfully. Yes, the application is working as it should. Okay, but you also need to test your invalid scenario or your negative scenario. You need to make sure that someone with a wrong username and a valid password will not be able to log into that website. You also need to make sure that someone with valid username and invalid password should not log. You also need to make sure that someone with invalid username and invalid password will not. Those three scenarios are your negative scenarios. You need to consider them. They are very important because applications can be working as it should, but most often the developers more pays attention to, oh yeah, let's get it working. Yeah, but the negative side they wouldn't consider that. So it's you as a quality assurance engineer that make sure that these areas are covered. If they haven't been covered by the developer, you raise it with them, raise a bug, they'll fix it, you'll test, do your regression testing around it, and pass your test case if everything is okay. All right, so the next one is verify one thing at a time. It's always a standard procedure to verify one thing at a time. Verify one thing at a time. Okay, each test case should focus on verifying one aspect of the system's behavior, one functionality. It should focus on one component. Okay, so this helps you to isolate issues and facilitate easier debugging. Okay, so when you are testing a particular problem, let's say you want to test on login, you concentrate on login functionality and you test it. You want to test your registration, you focus on registration. You don't jump from one test case, one component to another, that has got nothing to do with a particular test case you are testing. Once you've done that, if you want to do regression testing around, that's fine. But you know that you have concluded that particular test case or that particular scenario that you are testing. Okay. So we will not go into Gherkin. Recall that I did mention that for our test case and our test steps, there are ways that you can test it. You can decide to, list the steps that you follow, or you can also decide to use a standardized process known as using a language known as Gherkin language. Okay, so this Gherkin language has got its syntax. Okay, you use the syntax to write your test case. Well, now we'll go into what Gherkin language is, why we use it, and how we use it. Okay, so Gherkin is a domain-specific language designed for writing executable specification of software behavior. Okay, so it is primarily associated with behavioral-driven development, BDD. Okay, and is used to describe the expected behavior of a software in plain text formats that is easy to read and understand. Okay, Gherkin serves as a bridge between technical and non-technical stakeholders. It allows them to collaborate on defining and understanding the functionality of a software system. So what all this means is that the non-technical stakeholders, before Gherkin comes into play, before we started using Gherkin, we start thinking about behavioral-driven development, and Gherkin came about, right? So you can see sometimes the steps that we use to execute our tests are not being clearly defined. So that made some of the stakeholders, when they come to it, they don't understand what is going on. They don't understand what test you're executing. Okay, but when you write your test case using Gherkin, because it makes use of simple and plain English to define what, or plain text, not necessarily English, plain text, to define what, or step by step of what you want to do or what your test is going to do. They easily understands it, and they focus on user behavior as well. So that is why it's called behavior driven. So Gherkin has its syntax, which we will discuss in our next slide. Okay, so Gherkin has its syntax. Okay, Gherkin is designed to be human readable, right? It's designed to be human readable. It is simple. It uses neutral language format to describe behavior of a software. Okay, and the common keywords include feature. So we have feature, and feature describe a high level feature or functionality. We will see that when we start writing our test case, or when we start writing our feature file for our automation testing, or when we start writing our automation test script, you will get to understand what feature is. But for our manual testing, we don't necessarily make use of feature a lot. Okay, so we have scenarios, of course, represent a specific test scenario. You all know that I've said that over and over again. So we have another syntax which is given, when, and then. Okay, so these keywords define the step of a scenario represented. The given represents initial context. Okay, so let's say you want to navigate to the URL. You use given user navigate to URL. So any initial context, okay, let's say given I am on the home page, that is your initial context. So when you have any initial context, you always start with given. When you want to perform an action, given I navigate to the URL. So anytime you want to perform an action, you use when to perform the action. Given initial context, I am on the homepage of PrimeSoft. When I click on training, so because you are performing a click, you are performing an action, you will now use when. Okay? When you want to get your expected outcome or write your expected outcome, you use then. Okay, so let me give you an example of how you can put them together to write your test case. Like I said, the given is your initial context, right? You will use given I am on the home page of PrimeSearch. When I click on training, then I will see, or then the user will view the training page. Okay, so I want to test the training page, and I want to go to the to the home page of PrimeSoft. I want to click on the training header menu, okay, or the training menu, and then I want to view the training page. So you use given as your initial context, you use when for your action, you use then for your outcome. Okay, so we also have some other syntax such as and, but. So and is used for an additional step within a scenario. Let's say you can use and after given. Let's say you have two initial contests. Okay, you have two initial contests. You don't say given I am on the home page. When given I am on the home page, given I am on, or given I'm looking for another try to think about of another scenario where we can have two initial contests. Yeah, okay. So you don't say, given, let's say we have a cookie that usually pop up. Okay, once you navigate to the home page, you have a cookie and we want to disable it before we start our action, right? So you don't say, given I am on the home page, given I disable the cookie. No, okay. You have two initial contests, but you can only use one given. The remaining initial context, you will now put and, you will now use and. So how you will do that is, given I am on the home page and I disabled the cookies. Wow, and I click on the cookie. I don't want to use click, but I disable the cookies. Okay, the cookie pop up. Then you want to start performing your action. You now see, when I click on training, let's say you want to click on training and click and you want to perform two actions. So you don't say, when I click on training and I click on when I click on training, when I click on amount, when I click on, no, you use one when I click on training. Other ones you will now use and. If you want to perform 3 actions before you get to your expected outcome, you have to use and. Okay, so when you have gotten to your expected outcome, let's say you have 2 expected outcome, you need to see when you've, let's say for example, you are done with your registration. Okay, you will see a successful message and you will see an email, okay, that will be sent to you. So what you will say is, when I receive a successful message, then that is your then, because that's your expected outcome. Then I receive a successful message. Instead of saying another then, you will now use and. So you use and at every step you want to repeat. When you have 2 initial contexts, you write one given, the remaining one will be and depending on how many initial contests you want. When it comes to your action, right? Action means when you are clicking on anything or you are entering any data into an input field, you use your when. So if you have more than 2 or 3 actions, you use only one when. The remaining one, you will use and. Okay? When you want to use your then, you use one then, the remaining one you use and. Okay? You can also possibly use but you would rarely use bots anyways. So bot is when you want to have, okay, when you do this will happen. But when you do another thing, another thing will happen. So depending on the scenario, so you can use bots, but you rarely use it. Right. So the next syntax we'll have is background. Okay, background defines the steps that should be executed before every scenario in the future. We'll usually use this background when we are doing automated testing. So we usually use, let's say, we want to navigate to the website, we want to click on the cookie menu. You can put it on the background because every time you are navigating to the website, you click on the cookie pop-up. So you can put it on the background. So before any of your scenario will run, will execute, what you have on your background will execute first. You will see the implementation of that when we'll start writing our automation test script. Another one, which you will not be using for your manual testing, is scenario outline. So it allows you to define, it allows for definition of a template for scenarios with multiple sets of input data. So that is also being used for your automation testing. So during your automation testing, let's say you want to enter different input data, okay, you use, instead of using scenario, you use scenario outline, and we will see a sample of that when we start our automation. You also have example. Example is also a Gherkin syntax. You don't use it for manual testing as well. You mainly use it for automation. Okay, it's being used to provide input data for your scenario outline. So anytime you use scenario outline, you need to have an example syntax, and under the example syntax, you can now supply your input data. Right. So those are the Gherkin syntax we have. So for your manual testing, you'll be using given, when, then. You use scenario, given, when, then, and. For your automation, you use all of them. Okay, right. So now let's look at what a test script is. Okay, so test script is a set of instructions that are intended to test if the functionality of the software work as expected. So you use your test scripts mainly when you are writing an automated test. Okay, you use your test scripts, okay, to test if the application is working. So test script is part of automation testing. So you say, oh, let's do our test scripts. It's different from your test case. Okay, your test script is for your automation. When you have written all your test scripts and you say, okay, you can run your test script to see, oh, if our automation is still passing, if our test is still passing. Okay, so test script is written in specific programming language such as Java, Python, C#, JavaScript, and so on and so forth. Okay, so testers write test scripts. Okay, of course, we're the one that writes test scripts anyway. So yeah, developers also write their unit test scripts anyway. So, but we write more of integration test scripts. So now we will look at the difference between test case and test scripts. Okay, it's very simple. Like I said, we have, like I told us, test case is mainly for manual. and test script is for automation. So the purpose is to guide testing team about what to test and what the expected result is. This is for manual testing, which you'll start doing as soon as we're done with this section. So our test script is used to perform automation tests based on specific or specified requirements on the test script. Okay, the format is written manually. Test script is written with the use of automated test, use of a programming language, okay, or and not or and a test framework. Okay, so we have the environment, which include manual testing environment. So you use a manual testing environment to do that. While for automation, you use an automation software to write your test scripts, and it's used for automation testing. Okay, that's it for the slide. Any question before we go into the second section?
No question.
So this is a template, okay, that I designed, okay, for the purpose of this lecture, just to write our test case for a login, Facebook login functionality. Okay, so you can see it's a Facebook project. Okay, here we have a Facebook project. You can see the project name, Facebook. So project name is Facebook, modular name is login functionality, it's created by me, you can have your date time. So it has all the components that I mentioned that are important for your test case. You can see your test case ID, which we are going to fill. We'll have our test condition, we'll have our test steps. Okay, you can see our test steps, we'll have our preconditions, test data, expected results, actual results, status, so which could either be pass or fail. Okay, so now we want to write our test case. Okay, and now, like I said, we have two ways that you can write it. You can start to write it, okay, or in a linear format. You're not using the given when then, which we are going to do first. We'll just write step by step on how we can actually perform that test under our test step. And then I will show us another way that we can do it, okay, using Gherkin. And that's how I want you guys to do it going forward. I will also show you guys how to write our test case on how to write our test case on Azure DevOps as well. So I'll just pause for a while. 1 second. So this template, like I said, I designed has got all the components. Okay. So when you are designing yours, please do not limit it to what I've done here. Go ahead to explore, go ahead to design yours, make it better, make it beautiful. Okay. Explore with yourself. There are loads and loads of beautiful things you can do. You can design yours, you can add logo to it, you can change the background color, you can do anything, just make it beautiful. If you research for test case templates, you can see loads and loads of them with different colors and different design, okay, on Excel. Yeah. So like I said, only a few organizations still use, the Excel. Like I said, well, I did mention NHS, one of the organizations that still uses Excel for designing their test case, and other organizations as well. So now they want to write a test case for login functionality. Okay. Firstly, as I said, you need to give your test case an ID. On Azure will automatically do that for you. But for Excel, you need to do that yourself. Okay. And how do we do it? So when you click on it, let's give our test case ID T. We want to give it TC001. Okay, you can say TC_001 or TC-001. Okay, you can start to do it like this. So, but you only do this when you're writing your test case on Excel. Okay, so this is it for our first test case. Okay, so we want to write a test case. We will not execute this because I won't be putting in my valid username and valid password for Excel. But this is just to demonstrate to you or show you how to write it. Okay, So the second one we need to write is what is our test condition. Okay, so our test condition, like I say, we need to consider, we want to write a test case for the valid scenario first. A valid scenario means we are logging in with a valid detail. Okay, recall that this is just for our, I'm not going to execute it, okay, but just for us to learn how to, or see how we can write our test case in an Excel sheet. Okay, so we will now write down the test condition, and the test condition, which could as well be our scenario, is our login, which is to log in with valid detail. Okay, so I'll just type it, login log in with valid details. Okay, so what is our valid detail? We'll mention that when we come to our test data section. Okay, so the next one is our test steps. Test steps. We want to log in. How do we log into Facebook? Okay, so we have to launch our browser. We'll launch our browser. We'll go to Facebook and we can enter the URL. We'll go to Facebook URL. We'll enter our username. We'll disable so firstly, what we need to do is that we'll launch the browser. Okay, you might decide to say enter launch browser as your test steps. Okay, you might decide not to put it. So in this case, I will not include launch browser. I will just hit go to, okay, Facebook. Go to Facebook. Can you see my screen all right? Or is it too small? Let me try and zoom it a little bit. Okay, so as long as you can see, let me increase the font to 12. Okay, I'll just leave this. Increase the font size to 12. So it will be bolder. Increase this to 12 as well. To 12. Yeah, I think it's a bit bolder now. So go to Facebook, okay, and the URL we want to enter is HTTP, which is the URL we're listing, HTTPS. Okay, then we'll have our dot and forward slash, and we'll have our www dot, right, Facebook. This is our URL. So facebook.com. Okay, so this is our first go to Facebook. We'll have our URL. So this is our first one. So our next step would be, when you have gotten to Facebook, you accept or disable cookies, right? So we have to accept, okay, cookies. So once you accept cookies, the next one you want to do is to enter email address, right? So if you enter your email address, the next thing you need to enter is you enter your password, right? You enter your password, and the next step is to what? Click on login. Click on login button. You click on login button. So these are the steps that you follow to test this. Okay, these are the steps you will follow. Click on the login button. That's all right. So what are our preconditions for us to test this? What are our preconditions? So we have, for this particular step, we can have the precondition of, let me just expand this. So remember, like I said, please explore with yours. Okay, make it even better than mine. Make it better than mine. Okay, yeah, on some of this. I can move this up all the way. Is that some responded? Yeah. All right. So So the precondition you need to navigate to this URL is one, you need a good internet condition, right? So we can have our precondition as what? Good, okay, internet condition. Then that is one of the preconditions that we'll have. So when we'll have to enter email address, remember that what we're doing is a valid, we are logging in with a valid detail. So to enter our email address, it has to be, our precondition should be a valid, we should have a valid email address, right? So we can have under our precondition as valid email address, email address. Okay, same as for password, we can also have a valid password. Right. So we'll have valid email address, valid password as our precondition for these two steps. So now coming to our test data, what are the test data we need? Our test data we need for this particular one is a valid email address. So let's say our email address, our valid email address for the purpose of testing is test1234 at okay test.com. So and our password. So your password is meant to be hashed anyway. So you have your password, you wouldn't expose it, you just hash it. Okay, and then put hash 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 hash. Or you can just this hash is very tiny. I'll just put star just to hash it. Okay, so that is the password you will enter. So this is us writing our valid. Okay, so our expected condition. What's our expected condition? Okay, when we go to this Facebook, what are we expecting? When we have entered this URL to in our browser, click on enter, we should expect that what the Facebook landing page displays, right? So that is our expected condition, which is Facebook. Okay, you can say homepage displayed. So this is our Facebook homepage displays when we navigate to. So when you click on cookies, okay, we accept cookies. So our expected result when we accept cookie should be what? Okay, cookie successful accepted. Okay, cookies successfully accepted. Yep. So when we enter our username, right, our email address, which we usually use as our username, email address. Okay. So the expected condition is that our email address should be successfully entered. Right. So we'll just click on it. Email address successfully entered, or it's entered successfully. Okay. Then the same with our password. So password is entered as well successfully. Let me just click on this. Is entered. Right. So the next one we're going to have is when we click on the login button. So when we click on the login button, what are we expecting? We should expect to what? Successfully log into our Facebook. Okay. So when we click on login button, then we should successfully log in to, my Facebook page. So these are your expectations. When you have entered the username, you've entered the correct valid username, you've entered the correct or valid email address, you've entered the correct password, you should successfully log into your Facebook homepage. These are our expected conditions. Okay, now we'll have the status. Okay, you don't feel when you're writing your test case, you don't feel your actual results. So these are our test case for our positive scenario. Okay, or positive, our positive scenario. Okay, if you want to write for our negative scenario, you can also do the same that we did here. You can have your test case, which is TC. I'll just copy over some of them. You can also have your TC 002 because that is the next one. So I'll just copy this. So the next one, which is going to be our invalid, just copy this. Okay, that's best. Okay, so let me just log in with invalid data. Okay, so we want to have, remember that I told us that if we want to do our positive scenario, we can have our login with our positive, which is valid and invalid, valid email address and valid password. But if we want to do our negative, you can try to log in with your valid email address and invalid password. You can try to log in with invalid email address and valid password. So what we're going to do now is invalid email address, right? And you can do both invalid and see what it gives you. Okay, so we'll have our invalid email address, and then we can have our test steps. Yeah, so we can have our test steps as well. You can, which is the same thing as go to. We're going to repeat the same thing that we have. Go to Facebook. Okay, go to Facebook. Okay, go to Facebook URL. So I'm not going to repeat the URL again. Okay, you accept cookies. Once you've accepted cookies, this time around, we are entering invalid email address. So you enter invalid email, enter invalid email address, then you enter a valid password because that's what we want. Enter valid password. Okay, once we've entered the valid password, so then we can click on the login button. Login button. So now we've entered our invalid email address, we entered valid password, then we will also click on login button. These are your steps that you want to use to test this. So the same when you look at your test condition, they are the same. The only difference here under your test condition is that for this particular scenario, okay, you need an invalid email address, okay, which is the condition for this step. Okay, you need invalid email. You need invalid email address, same as your test data. So for your test data here, you need an invalid email address for this particular one. You need an invalid email address. So what do we call our invalid email address? So let's just use test. Okay, let's just say test. Okay, test.com. That's what we want to use as our invalid email address, and we'll also have our invalid valid password, which we will not display. Okay, you won't display your password. So the same as the expected condition, obviously the expected condition, the expected result will not be the same, but it will be the same for these other ones. So for navigating to URL, Facebook will display, of course, Facebook. So Facebook homepage displays. So you also have your next step, your cookie successfully accepted. Okay, successfully accepted. The next, of course, your password, okay, is entered successfully. Of course, no, the next one is email address, sorry. Of course, when you enter a wrong email address, it will enter successfully, but when you click on login, it wouldn't log you in. Yeah, so email address is entered. So the next one will have password is entered. Then when you now click on login, okay, your expectation is that error message will display. Error message is displayed. So error message is displayed. These are your expected results. So this is how you write your test case on an Excel sheet when you're writing it on an Excel sheet. This is how you write it. Okay, like I said before, feel free to design yours. Feel free to use all your Excel skills to be creative, make it beautiful. Make it clean, add background color, design it, make it so nice, bold it. apply all your Excel techniques, your Excel skills to design yours. Okay, but ensure that you have all these components stated that makes it a standard test case when you're doing it on Excel. So now these are your test case. You do not have status pass or fail when you have not executed it. You don't have your actual results. So now let's say we have this, we've written it, developer is done developing the website, and we want to test it now. So what we will do is we will take our test data, we'll ensure we have all the precondition, which says we have need a good internet, we'll have our URL. Okay, we have our URL, which is this. You copy it. Okay, you can copy your URL. So when you want to execute it, this is how you do execute it. You already have your test script, you have all your test data, you have your test steps. Okay, you can now take the URL and you navigate to website, or you navigate to a you can navigate to Facebook. Okay, just just put this, paste, and then click on enter. Okay, I think because I've entered this before, that's why I'm not seeing the pop-up anyway. So let me disable this and then enter. Okay, so let me do this on incognito, and yeah, see if I do this on incognito and I paste this and I click on enter. Yeah, can you see the cookies? Okay, so now look at this now. So the first step, as you all know, the first step is to navigate to this website. Okay, we have navigated to this website. The second step is to what? Accept cookie. So go and allow all. Okay, so as you know, the first step where we have our expected condition is to see once we navigate to our homepage, we'll see the homepage. We'll see the homepage and then we'll accept cookie. Once we accept cookie, we can see this field. We can enter our email address. So we can enter tests, whatever, tests. You can enter tests. I'm not going to enter it because I haven't signed up to this, but this is just for the purpose of learning. Tests. So what you do is that you enter your valid email address for the first one. Okay, let's say at test.com. And then you go ahead to enter your password. Okay, which of course, if I enter this time around, I'm going to use, of course, it's not showing anyway. So once you enter your password, this is your valid username, for example, and you enter your valid password and click on login. Once you click on this login, you will get a successful message, and then you'll be able to log into this test account. So this is you executing the testing. And once you have logged in successfully, I'm not going to click on login anyway. So once you've clicked on this and you logged in successfully, this is your test passed. So you can go back. Okay, you can go back to this and say, okay, of course, during this your first, when you navigate to this, you can see the Facebook, you can enter your actual results, which is working as expected. Okay, working as expected. Okay, so you click on cookie, you accept cookie, and cookie is successfully accepted, which we did. You can put it that is working as expected. Okay, if you want to repeat this, that's fine. But if it's working as expected, then that is fine. So you enter your email address. You entered your email address and it's working as expected. You can also have that as working as expected as well. So have this, have it as working as expected. So then enter password. Of course, password successfully entered is working as expected as well. Right. So successful when this one is what? Successful login to my Facebook page. Okay. Which is working as expected, which is my, you can now say, yeah, log into my Facebook page. Okay. You can say Facebook of my Facebook page. Facebook page display. Okay, meaning that it's working as expected. Okay. Then you can now add your status for each of these steps. And the status for this is pass, because of course it passed. You were able to navigate to the URL. Of course, this one passed because you were able to enter your username. Okay, this step passed because you were able to enter your, okay, you clicked on cookie, you were able to enter your username. So this one as well passed. Okay, passed because you entered your password successfully. And when you click on login button, okay, the expected condition was successful login to my Facebook page, and the actual is that my Facebook page display, which is just successfully login. Or you can also put working as expected here if everything is fine. Then you can also say that passed. So that means you have executed this, and while you executed it, is you navigate to the home page. and you find out that it's, you tested it, you perform the same action following your step, and everything was fine, working as expected. So you can just pass that. So this also pass. So the same thing is what you will do here as well for the invalid. Okay, you will go to the page, click on this, following the same step, the same thing we did, enter invalid password. And when you click on login, you see an error message will display. So if I go back to that page, okay, yeah, if I go back to this page and if I click on login, because these are invalid, you can see the error message will display. So it's loading. Let's see the error message. Yeah, you can see the error message saying that there was a problem with logging in, but you can send whatever. So this is an error message, okay, displaying. So yeah, so this is an error message because the username and password are incorrect. Okay, so you can come back here and still say, okay, an error message display. Fill in this, working as expected, working as expected. Okay, let me just fill it in. Working as expected. To this, working as expected. Yeah, up to this, working as expected, working as expected. Yeah, working as expected because error message did display. Okay, so we'll come to this as well. You can say pass. We'll come to this one as well. We can pass, 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 and pass as well. So this is you executed your results, So before execution, when we just wrote our test case, we do not have our actual result and we do not have our status. So we have executed it and now we now have our actual result and we now have our status. Okay. So let's say, for example, you logged in with invalid email address and Facebook allowed you to log in. That means it's a bug. That means anybody can log in with an invalid password, invalid email address. Okay, so you will not put fail if that is the scenario or the situation. Okay, so this is it with the first stage of writing when you are writing it in ordinary step. Okay, but for our purpose of for when we are writing, what many organizations are adapting is behavioral driven. Behavioral driven, where you write your code in plain English, okay, using Gherkin language. So Gherkin, like I say, makes use of plain text, but it has a syntax, okay, which mainly will be the major ones we'll be using for our manual testing is given, when, then, and. Anyway, so I've explained what is given is the initial context, when is the action, and then is the expected result, expected outcome, and is used when you want to repeat each of these syntax over again. Okay, so in that case, I will show you how to use Gherkin syntax to do the same thing that we have done here. Okay, we use Gherkin syntax to do the same thing, how you write it using Gherkin syntax. Okay, so let's look at the next slide, the next sheet. I also have a template, okay, so where I'll be writing my test in given, when, then here. Okay, so I've given you the syntax here, given, when, then. The same way, this is BDD, behavior driven development, okay, and we're going to be repeating the same thing. So how do we do it? Recall we'll have only go to URL and go to Facebook, click accept cookie, enter this, enter that, Facebook display, right? But now using given, when, then, which you will be using, because we'll be using behavior driven development on Agile, on our job, and when we'll be doing our manual testing, because we'll be using BDD too. Okay, so how you do it, our initial context, as you know, is when user navigate, giving user navigate to the website. Okay, so how you write it is you say giving, okay, user, and it's always user set that user navigate to Facebook. You can say Facebook URL, okay, URL. Giving user navigate to Facebook URL. You can decide to put the URL, okay, you can decide to put it as a string. Okay, you can decide to put this and then put the URL inside the string. Okay, so you can just decide to put it here and say, I just decide to put it here and say HTTP, HTTP, then / whatever. Okay, so I'm not going to HTTPS, basically. I'm not going to write all of them because of time. Okay, so you just complete it. Okay, and this is my again. Okay, yeah. So, and you can have the second one, which is when user. So Okay, let's take the background color anyway. So when user, when is the action? Okay, so when user, or so when user, yeah, let's use that. When, like I said, when is an action? Okay, when user, well, because I've given this particular scenario before, let me still use it. And user, okay, accepts cookies. Okay, now, so this is initial context, which is navigating to the URL. And another initial context is that we accept cookie. Okay, and after that accepting cookie, we can now start performing our action. When user, okay, enters valid, because this is for valid scenario, valid email address. Okay, remember that I say when you want to use, when you are using, you want to repeat each action, either given when or then, you want to repeat it 2 times, you use and. Okay, so we're going to use and again, which is and user, okay, enters valid password. Okay, and another action, we want to click on the login button, right? And user clicks on login button. So what will be our outcome, which is the then, okay, users Facebook page, okay, is successfully displayed. So these are the steps when you are writing it in behavioral-driven development, or given when then. So these are the steps. Giving user navigate to the URL, you navigate, and user accept cookies, you accept cookies. When user entered valid email address and user entered valid password and user click on login, then user Facebook page is successfully displayed. So this is how to write it when you're using given when. And when you'll be writing your test case analysis, this is exactly how you write it as well. Okay, so when you will, even during the automation, this is how you write your feature file. When you write your feature file like this, you can now convert this plain English, because we will be integrating what is called spec flow, okay, which is used for BDD. We will convert this plain English to C# language, and then we can write other functions or method to ensure that these steps are running. Okay, but for now, this is how you use it for your manual testing. So once you have done this, you can have your expected results somewhere here. You can have your expected results, which is either successful, work as expected, you can have them here. And then you can say user successful navigate, cookie successful accepted, user successful enter username, email address, user successfully enter password, user successfully, and then user Facebook page successfully displayed as you expected. But you can run them, go through them, go step by step on the web application under test, and validate that they pass. Okay, so this is it on our Excel. Okay, any question?
Yeah, I have a question. I don't know if I must have missed a part, but at what point, I know that we started with the test cases and we put the various columns on Excel.
Yeah.
So how do we reconcile this and the test case we recorded in Excel? I'm trying to see the connection.
I don't get it.
You know that when we started with the Excel, with our test case written in Excel with the various columns.
Yeah.
So this Gherkin syntax, right?
Yeah.
It sort of basis what we did before, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
So what I showed you here is the format, how you can implement Gherkin. So from what we did before, the reason why I showed you this is so when you see this, it wouldn't sound like something you don't know before or you haven't seen. So if you want to write this one in Gherkin, all you need to do is just put the syntax, okay? Giving user go to and navigate at the same, okay? You can say giving, just all you need to do here is just to put giving user, okay, go to Facebook, and user accepts cookie when user enter email address and user enter password and user click on this. The only difference is that you now put then and put your expected condition, which is user successfully logged into Facebook.
Yes. My question is these columns now, right? These test steps.
Okay,
This is where the gherkin. So I'm looking for how do we reconcile the gherkin in this? Do we collapse?
Okay, yeah.
Some
So do we
columns?
collapse?
Do we
No,
collapse the test case, test step columns?
no,
Put
you
them
don't.
columns.
No, you don't. The only thing I've just represented is this particular step on this one. So this particular step, test steps, is the only thing I've just represented. So every other one remains.
Okay.
Every other one remains. So the only thing I've just represented on this sheet too, this is just this particular test step.
Okay,
so if you look at, okay, yeah, there's no test step here. We should have put test steps. So the only thing I've just represented here is this particular thing, just this one.
Okay.
Just this one.
Every other thing remains. Every
other thing remains the same. Nothing changes. Every other thing remains the same. Only this is what I've done. Yeah.